Some places get a reputation slowly. This building earned its before anyone understood why. In 2022, an apartment security camera in a Manhattan building recorded something investigators still cannot explain. The building had stood on East 14th Street for over 30 years, close to Union Square, 12 floors, 48 apartments, and a reputation that made new tenants uncomfortable once they heard about it. Not dangerous, not violent, just wrong. The kind of wrong that settles into a building slowly, over years, until it becomes part of the walls. The complaints had started almost a decade earlier. Always the same, always from different residents. Footsteps in the hallway after midnight. Slow footsteps. Back and forth. Back and forth. Residents would lie awake listening, then get up, open their door, and find a completely empty hallway. Emergency lights. Silence. Subway rumbling faintly beneath the building. This happened so regularly that longtime residents stopped reporting it. They simply accepted it as part of living in the building. Something wrong that nobody fixes, because nobody knows how. The building superintendent was a practical man named Howard Reyes. He had managed the building for 6 years. He had heard every complaint. He had investigated every report. He had found nothing, every single time. So in early 2022, he installed new security cameras. 8 of them, 1 per floor for the first 4 floors. High definition, motion activated, timestamp verified. If something was walking those hallways at night, the cameras would catch it. Howard reviewed the first week of footage himself. Nothing unusual. Second week, nothing. Third week, camera 7 activated at 2:43 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. Howard had managed buildings across Manhattan for years. He had never seen anything like what came next. The technician said the footage could not be altered. What you see is what happened. Howard watched the footage the next morning. He watched it once, then sat back in his chair, then watched it again, then called the camera company, asked if there was any way the footage could be corrupted, digitally altered, glitched. The technician said no. The timestamp verification system made alteration impossible. What you see is what happened, he said. Howard thanked him, hung up, and watched the footage a third time. Camera 7, second floor hallway, 2:43 a.m. The hallway was completely empty. Emergency lights casting their usual weak glow. Silence so complete the camera microphone captured nothing. Not even the building settling. Not even the subway beneath the street. Just silence. For exactly 19 seconds. Nothing moved. Then apartment 214 opened. Not quickly, not violently. Slowly. The handle turned. The door swung inward. Smooth and deliberate. Like someone who knew exactly how to open it. The doorway beyond was completely dark. No light from inside the apartment. Just a rectangle of pure darkness. The door stayed open. 5 seconds. 10. Then a figure stepped out into the hallway. Howard had seen a lot in 6 years of managing buildings in this city. He had never seen anything like this. It stood completely still, facing the camera, as if it had known exactly where to look. The footage was blurry around the figure. Not the hallway, not the walls, not the floor, just the figure itself. As if the camera struggled to process whatever it was looking at. Its face could not be seen. Its features could not be made out. It was simply a dark shape, standing in the hallway. Completely still, not moving, not looking around, just facing the camera, directly, precisely, as if it had known exactly where the camera was, before it had even stepped out of the apartment. Then the timestamp froze. 2 hours 43 minutes and 18 seconds. Howard noticed this on his second viewing. The video kept playing. The figure kept standing there, but the timestamp never moved past 2 hours 43 minutes and 18 seconds. As if time itself had stopped, or as if whatever was standing in that hallway existed in a moment that refused to end. Howard checked the timestamp verification log. No errors recorded. No signal interruption. The system showed continuous, uninterrupted recording. But the timestamp never moved. Then the figure began walking toward the camera. 1 step, then another. But its movement looked wrong. Deeply wrong. Every few seconds the figure seemed to jump slightly forward, as if frames of the recording were simply missing, as if the space between each step did not exist. It was not walking the way a person walks. It was simply getting closer, one frame at a time. Step, jump, step, jump. Each time it jumped, it was significantly closer to the camera. Howard found himself leaning back in his chair, without realizing he was doing it. When the figure was 10 feet from the camera, everything went dark. 10 seconds. That's all it took for everything to disappear. When the figure was approximately 10 feet from the camera, all the hallway lights shut off simultaneously. Complete darkness. The camera switched to low light mode automatically, showing a grainy green tinted image of the empty hallway. Empty. The figure was gone. 10 seconds of darkness. Then the lights returned. The hallway was completely empty. Apartment 214 door was closed. Everything exactly as it had been. Before 2:43 a.m. As if nothing had happened. As if nobody had been there. Howard reviewed every other camera in the building. That entire night, no one had entered or exited apartment 214. No one had been in that hallway. According to the entrance cameras, no one had even entered the building after midnight. The figure had not come from outside. It had not come from the elevator. It had not come from the stairwell. According to every camera in the building, that corridor had been completely empty all night, except for camera 7, which showed something different entirely. The next morning, the tenant of apartment 214 came to Howard's office. A woman named Ellen Chun, early 30s, who worked downtown. She looked like she had not slept. She said that at exactly 2:43 a.m., she had been woken by a sound, not from the hallway, from inside the bedroom wall. 3 slow knocks. From inside the wall itself. She had sat up in bed, turned on the light, and stared at the wall for a long time. Then she said something that made Howard very still. She said, "I had the feeling that whatever was knocking was not trying to get in. It was letting me know that it was already inside." Police found nothing. No explanation. But Howard found something far worse. He noticed it on the 4th viewing. Something that wasn't there on the 1st. Police searched the apartment that afternoon. No signs of forced entry. No hidden spaces. No structural anomalies in the bedroom wall. No explanation. The officer who led the search told Howard privately that this was not the first time they had received a call like this. From this building. Howard asked how many times. The officer looked at him for a moment, then said, "Enough that we stopped writing them up." But Howard noticed one final detail. Something he had not seen on the 1st or 2nd viewing. Something he only noticed on the 4th. In the 19 seconds of empty hallway. Before apartment 214 opened. Before the figure appeared. Before anything happened. There was a shadow on the wall beside the door. A dark shape. The size and rough outline of a person. Standing beside the door. Completely still. It had no source. Nothing in the hallway could have cast it. And when Howard went back to his original viewing, his very first time watching the footage, the shadow was not there. Camera 7 was removed 3 weeks later. Howard told residents it had malfunctioned. He told the camera company the same thing. He deleted his personal copies of the footage, all except one, which he kept on a drive, in his desk drawer, locked. Ellen moved out of apartment 214 at the end of that month, relocated to a building further uptown. The apartment has been occupied 3 times since then. Each tenant has stayed less than 2 months. None of them have given a specific reason for leaving. They simply leave. The footsteps in the hallway are still reported. Slow footsteps. Back and forth. After midnight, Howard still manages the building. He still investigates every complaint. He still finds nothing. But he no longer installs cameras. And at 2:43 a.m., on certain nights, residents on the 2nd floor still hear it. Slow footsteps in the hallway. Back and forth. Back and forth. And apartment 214 goes very quiet. Some places get a reputation slowly. This building earned its before anyone understood why. In 2022, an apartment security camera in a Manhattan building recorded something investigators still cannot explain. The building had stood on East 14th Street for over 30 years, close to Union Square, 12 floors, 48 apartments, and a reputation that made new tenants uncomfortable once they heard about it. Not dangerous, not violent, just wrong. The kind of wrong that settles into a building slowly, over years, until it becomes part of the walls. The complaints had started almost a decade earlier. Always the same, always from different residents. Footsteps in the hallway after midnight. Slow footsteps. Back and forth. Back and forth. Residents would lie awake listening. Then get up, open their door, and find a completely empty hallway. Emergency lights. Silence. Subway rumbling faintly beneath the building. This happened so regularly that longtime residents stopped reporting it. They simply accepted it as part of living in the building. Something wrong that nobody fixes, because nobody knows how. The building superintendent was a practical man named Howard Reyes. He had managed the building for 6 years. He had heard every complaint. He had investigated every report. He had found nothing, every single time. So in early 2022, he installed new security cameras. 8 of them, 1 per floor for the first 4 floors. High definition, motion activated, timestamp verified. If something was walking those hallways at night, the cameras would catch it. Howard reviewed the first week of footage himself. Nothing unusual. Second week, nothing. Third week, camera 7 activated at 2:43 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. Howard had managed buildings across Manhattan for years. He had never seen anything like what came next. The figure returned the next night. This time it had moved, much closer to the house. The police left without finding anything. The officer suggested it might have been a neighbor cutting through. David nodded and said, "Thank you." He did not believe that explanation, but he did not have a better one. He told himself it was probably nothing. Then the following night the camera activated again. This time the figure was much closer to the house, standing beside the back door, completely motionless. Rachel saw the alert on her phone first. She woke David immediately. They both stood in the kitchen staring at the live feed on his phone. The figure stood just outside the back door, facing the house directly. Neither of them said anything for a long moment. The street outside was quiet. No traffic, no neighbors walking dogs. Just Staten Island at 3 a.m. and something standing outside their back door. The family refused to go outside. They locked every door, checked every window, sat together in the living room until morning. When they checked the footage the next day, they noticed something that made David's stomach drop. The timestamp showed the figure had been standing there for nearly 4 hours, without moving. Not once, not a single shift in weight, not a single adjustment, just standing, facing their back door, for 4 hours in the middle of the night, while they slept on the other side of the wall. Rachel wanted to call the police again. David wasn't sure what they would even say. How do you explain something that doesn't move for 4 hours? It stood completely still, facing the camera, as if it had known exactly where to look. The footage was blurry around the figure. Not the hallway, not the walls, not the floor, just the figure itself. As if the camera struggled to process whatever it was looking at. Its face could not be seen. Its features could not be made out. It was simply a dark shape, standing in the hallway, completely still, not moving, not looking around, just facing the camera, directly, precisely, as if it had known exactly where the camera was, before it had even stepped out of the apartment. Then the timestamp froze. 2 hours 43 minutes and 18 seconds. Howard noticed this on his second viewing. The video kept playing. The figure kept standing there, but the timestamp never moved past 2 hours 43 minutes and 18 seconds. As if time itself had stopped, or as if whatever was standing in that hallway existed in a moment that refused to end. Howard checked the timestamp verification log. No errors recorded. No signal interruption. The system showed continuous, uninterrupted recording, but the timestamp never moved. Then the figure began walking toward the camera. One step, then another. But its movement looked wrong, deeply wrong. Every few seconds the figure seemed to jump slightly forward, as if frames of the recording were simply missing, as if the space between each step did not exist. It was not walking the way a person walks. It was simply getting closer, one frame at a time. Step, jump, step, jump. Each time it jumped, it was significantly closer to the camera. Howard found himself leaning back in his chair, without realizing he was doing it. When the figure was 10 feet from the camera, everything went dark. The next morning brought one final alert. Words that made no sense. Words that should not have been possible. The next morning the security system recorded one final alert. David's phone buzzed at 6:15 a.m. He was already awake. He looked at the notification and felt something cold settle in his chest. Motion detected. Inside backyard camera. He stared at those words for a long time. The camera faced only the backyard. It was mounted on the exterior wall of the house, pointed at the garden and the oak tree. There was no inside view. There had never been an inside view. The camera was not capable of recording anything indoors. David opened the app, pulled up the alert. The thumbnail image loaded slowly and showed something that made no sense at all. A dark room, wooden floor, a window in the background. He recognized the curtains immediately. It was his daughter's bedroom. David was already moving before he finished the thought, running up the stairs, throwing open his daughter's door. She was asleep, completely fine. Nothing in the room appeared disturbed. David stood in the doorway, breathing hard, staring at the empty space beside her bed, where the thumbnail had shown something standing, watching her sleep. Rachel found him standing in the doorway minutes later. He didn't explain what he had seen. He simply said they needed to leave as soon as possible. A brownstone in Park Slope, Brooklyn. A doorbell ringing every night, always at the exact same time. In December 2023, a couple living in a Brooklyn brownstone installed a smart doorbell camera after someone repeatedly rang their doorbell late at night. Mark and Jenna Foster, married 3 years. A quiet block in Park Slope, tree-lined streets, familiar neighbors. The kind of Brooklyn block where everyone knows everyone. The kind of place where nothing unusual ever happens. Until it does. It started one night in early December. A single doorbell ring at 3:13 a.m. Mark woke up, checked his phone, assumed it was a mistake, went back to sleep. The next night it happened again. 3:13 a.m. Exactly. The night after that. 3:13 a.m. Again. Same time. Every single night. Without variation. Mark ordered a smart doorbell camera online. It arrived 2 days later. He installed it himself that same afternoon. That night the notification arrived right on schedule. 3:13 a.m. Mark grabbed his phone immediately, pulled up the live camera feed. Empty front porch. Empty front steps. The quiet Park Slope street beyond. Nobody there. He assumed it was a technical glitch, a faulty sensor. He reviewed the recorded footage the next morning. The video showed an empty front porch. No movement. No visitors. Yet the doorbell had rung. Clearly. Audibly. On schedule. He told himself it was a glitch. The second night proved him wrong. She stood at the bottom of the brownstone steps, watching, not moving at all. The second night the camera captured something different. 3:13 a.m. Jenna saw the notification first. She woke Mark immediately. They both looked at the live feed together and froze. A woman stood at the bottom of their front steps, on the Park Slope sidewalk. She wore an old gray coat, soaked through despite the dry December night. Her face was hidden beneath long wet hair, hanging forward completely. She did not walk toward the house, did not look up at the camera, did not move at all. She simply stood there, facing their brownstone, watching. Mark called the police immediately. Officers from the local precinct arrived within 15 minutes. They walked the entire block, checked every doorway, every parked car, every shadow. No woman in a gray coat anywhere. The officer told them it was probably nothing. A neighbor walking home late maybe. Suggested they get some sleep. Mark and Jenna did not sleep that night. The third night, the woman was closer. Halfway up the brownstone steps. Halfway up the steps. Then suddenly, directly in front of the camera. The third night the camera sent another alert. 3:13 a.m. Exactly on schedule. Mark and Jenna were both already awake, sitting in their living room on the ground floor, listening to the quiet Brooklyn street outside. They opened the feed together. This time the woman was standing halfway up the brownstone steps. Closer than before. Significantly closer. She remained perfectly still. For almost 5 minutes. Neither Mark nor Jenna moved during that time. Both staring at the screen. Barely breathing. Outside a taxi moved slowly down the street. Its headlights briefly illuminating the front steps. For 1 second the woman was visible in the taxi's light. Then darkness again. And she was still there. Still completely still. Then something happened that made no sense at all. Without taking a single step, she suddenly appeared directly in front of the camera. The footage had skipped. Several seconds, simply missing. No walking captured between the two positions. One moment she was halfway down the steps. The next, She was directly in front of the lens, inches away. Slowly, she lifted her head and smiled. Then the video froze completely. Her smiling face locked on the screen, unmoving. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Mark finally closed the app. He did not open it again that night. The notification didn't say motion detected. It said something far worse. The next morning, Mark noticed the footprints first. He opened the front door of the brownstone early, before Jenna was awake, and stopped. Muddy footprints on the front steps, leading from the sidewalk, up the steps, to the front door. He followed them with his eyes, all the way to the threshold. Then he looked for footprints leading away. There were none, not a single one, as if whoever had walked up those steps had simply ceased to exist. At the front door, Mark went back inside, locked the door, sat at the kitchen table, and opened the security app to disconnect the camera entirely. He had decided they were done with it. Whatever was happening, he did not want a camera capturing it anymore. Just before he disconnected the device, he noticed one final notification waiting. It was timestamped 3:13 a.m., but it was not a motion alert. It was not in the usual format at all. He opened it slowly. It simply read, "Someone is already inside." Mark stared at those 3 words for a very long time, then called for Jenna. She came downstairs immediately, read the notification over his shoulder. Neither of them spoke. Then Mark called 911. Officers arrived within minutes. They searched everything. What they found changed nothing. And that was the most terrifying part of all. Every room, every closet, every window, no one was found. But that didn't mean no one was there. Police searched the entire brownstone thoroughly. Every room on every floor, every closet, every bathroom, every possible hiding space. Every window was checked and confirmed locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry anywhere. No one was found inside the brownstone. Officially, the property was completely clear. The officer in charge told Mark and Jenna, "There is nobody here. You are safe." But Mark and Jenna did not feel safe. They sat in their living room after the officers left, neither of them speaking for a long time, both thinking the same thing, neither willing to say it out loud first. Finally, Jenna spoke. "Just because they did not find anyone does not mean nobody is here." Mark did not argue. The couple moved out of the Park Slope brownstone the following week. They told their landlord it was a personal decision, told friends they needed more space. Nobody questioned it too closely. Nobody knew about the doorbell, the woman, the footprints, or the final notification. They relocated to an apartment in Queens, ground floor unit, with no front steps, no front porch, no brownstone entrance. Jenna chose it specifically. Mark understood why without asking. The new tenants of the Park Slope brownstone refused to install another doorbell camera. When neighbors asked why, they simply said, "Some things are better left unrecorded." The brownstone has changed tenants twice more since then. Neighbors on the block have noticed something odd about the pattern. Every family who has lived there avoids smart doorbells entirely. No cameras facing the front steps. No motion sensors covering the entrance. As if word has quietly passed between residents, without anyone ever fully explaining why. And on certain nights, around 3:13 a.m., neighbors with a clear view of that brownstone report seeing something standing at the bottom of the front steps. A dark shape, facing the entrance, completely still, as if waiting for a camera that is no longer there. Because once something rings that bell, and once you let it know you are home, it does not forget the address. It simply waits for the next camera, the next notification, the next person foolish enough to check the live feed. At 3:13 a.m., on a quiet Brooklyn night, when the street is empty, and something is already inside.